Welcome to Canada's podcast. Canada's podcast, the number one podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs.
Hello, this is Angela Fay from Canada's podcast. I'm here today with Peter Aceto. And Peter has just completed a 2-year turnaround in the operation of Canada's largest mortgage brokerage, the Mortgage Alliance Company of Canada. And prior to that, he's probably most famous for being a founding member of Tangerine, formerly ING Direct. So we are privileged to have this duo citizen, Canadian-American, here on this podcast with us today, talking about how he helped transform ING Direct and to Canada's most preferred everyday bank, ultimately leading to the 2012 $3.1 billion acquisition of ING by Scotiabank. Right now, Peter himself is currently focused on reversing the epidemic of quiet quitting through caring and compassionate leadership. So today we are screwing the status quo and adopting Weology as a #1 innovation strategy. Welcome, Peter.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, I was just getting my copy for you. Yeah, what a great introduction, Angela. It's an honor to be here, and I really look forward to our conversation. And I hope Canada's podcast listeners enjoy it too.
Okay, awesome. So first of all, quick shout out to Xander, a colleague of mine who said, as I was talking to him about corporate culture and what I think a lot of companies should adopt in the future, he said, and you should read Weology by Peter, which has led to this amazing connection. So
thank you, Xander.
Tell me a little bit more. What is Weology? The concept, the machine, the humans, and click.
Yes, I would love to, because I'm very excited about the topic, even though this book was written 8 years ago, but I think it's very, very relevant today. So it was written I was the president and CEO of ING Direct, which, as you rightfully pointed out, after Scotia bought us, we renamed to Tangerine. And there was an opportunity to write a book and share sort of the internal philosophies of Tangerine, and more in particular as it relates to leadership. So it really is a book about the leadership style that I learned over my 2 decades, actually 21 years with ING Direct Canada, the US, back in Canada, and which was launched all around the world. And I think it's a bunch of lessons I've learned about leadership, as well as observing other great leaders. And my goal, was to share a little bit with people about the inner workings of how a company like this works, that's been so transformative and so successful, but also as a guide for, hopefully the way leaders will lead in the future. And it's organized in a few sections. There's hundreds of stories that I've personally either experienced or I've been exposed to. And I think the core of the book and the message is really this, which is the core to success is people, right? And the highest, best use of a leader is to help inspire and guide and help people grow so that they can be the best that they can be. And if we comes before me, meaning the team before my own personal needs, that we all win together. And I think that's the lessons I've learned in my years in leadership.
Awesome. And can you, that's broken. I know the book, I haven't read it cover to cover, but it's coming. The concept, the machine, the humans. What is click? Can you explain?
So click is really like, when you listen to the concept and then you learn a little bit about how Weology works inside of an organization, and then you focus a little bit on the people side of things. And for me, when you put all those things together, click, it's like the conclusion. And, when you have that moment where, so it's funny, when I was, writing it, I wrote stories and lessons learned. And when you organize them and put them all together, for me, there was a click. And the click led to the title of Weology. So for me, click is really the conclusion. When you get all the pieces, you put them together, a light bulb goes off where, I get this leadership style and how it leads to the individual success, the team success, the stakeholder success. And really the story of Tangerine and other companies like it.
Well, and I kind of, said the finale, which is the takeover and the successes, is very much, it speaks for itself. But talking about, okay, I love the idea. We read the book, we adopt the philosophy. What do you do on Monday, right? What are your favorite ideas and stories that you've seen Weology work over and above the status quo of everybody in it for herself? What are your favorite stories?
Well, there's a lot of them over a long period of time, and it'd be hard to implement them all on Monday. But that's a great segue, actually, into probably not one of the ones I would have brought to the forefront, but certainly one thing I've learned. I think it's common among all leaders, and it's common among all organizations. No, we can't do them all on Monday because organizations can't, depending on your organization and people, I mean, it's hard to do 10 things well on Monday. So we have to focus. And one thing I learned is when we were very focused on a customer and we were focused on one product and one experience, how easy it was to do a really good job. And then when you started adding other focuses and products and things like that, that's where you start to learn the limitations of how much change an individual and a company can undertake at one time. So I'd say that's one really important lesson, which is leaders and senior teams need to be very, very thoughtful about how much change an organization can handle and doing one or two or three things great and prioritizing them. You said when we started, screw the status quo, and it is maybe a little more punchy in the face than I am, but I do stand by it, which is, here, this is the lesson about asking why or why not. We were trying to be a global challenger, and definitely a challenger here in Canada, in a sector that's been around in Canada for over 150 years. The only way we were going to differentiate ourselves was to be different, but it's regulated, right? So you have to maintain and comply with the spirit of the rules. So asking questions like, why do we do it that way? Why can't we do it this way? When you ask the question is, why do we do it this way? And the answer is, well, because we've always done it that way.
Right.
When I hear that answer, I go,
cringe.
There's an opportunity right there. So fortunately for me, I had the privilege of being a lawyer early in my career. So I really understood the rules and regulations with regards to banking and compliance. So I could really challenge, well, we've always done it this way, and say, well, why don't you bring me the rule that says I have to do it that way? And then we could find ways to be compliant with the rules and the laws, but still be different and innovative. I think another important lesson I learned is around around culture, right? And if you build a culture of people who care about their clients, they care about each other, and they really want to have a positive impact on people's lives. In our case, it was to help our clients live a healthier financial life by helping them take control of their money and their finances. That if you really do build a culture that has momentum, your competitor really cannot copy you. It's almost impossible for them to do it. And that culture is in itself a competitive advantage. And maybe the last story I'll share with you now, because I don't want to go on and read the whole book to you. There's a section in there called Love the Haters. And I think, for me, that's about how people who are critical of your business, so those nasty people who are like, this is not done well, or this is poor, or this fee is not right, or you say this here and you say that there, we tend to, just try and tamp those things down. But those people can be so radically important to helping you improve your business. And we had a mechanism to listen to those people and be able to in a very agile way, make those types of changes. And one thing I learned, that if the CEO or a senior leader actually calls them, they're not as mean anymore. And if you make the change that they ask for, which they never believe that you would listen to them, a hater can become an evangelist very, very quickly. And I think we built an army of evangelists who started as haters because we took their advice, we listened, we fixed it, we thanked them, and blew people's minds. So those are a handful of stories, I think.
I love those stories. I would like to elaborate on one a little bit. The love the haters is pretty clear to me. The one that I'd like to elaborate on a little bit, and because part of it is I'm working with a startup right now where the big vision, is super clear. The piece that's missing for me in this environment is the why. And the second piece of that, the missing why sometimes can be a problem, but what we're talking from a leadership perspective, but I also want to acknowledge from the ground up, the employees on the ground. What lesson can they take from that? We can't do everything on Monday scenario, right? There's probably patience. There's probably, some states of being that they can adopt in there. So what, not so much advice, but what would you love to share with all of the doers on the ground that are help you enact a really big vision?
Yeah, so I think there's two things I wouldn't mind pulling out of what you just said. One is you talked a little bit about the why. Like for me, a synonym is like sort of your purpose.
Yes.
And we all talk about that. And Simon Sinek put it at the front of our brains, and I'm obviously quite a big fan of his. But I think the purpose of an organization and the why is absolutely critical and fundamental. Why is that? Well, you could have 25 people in your organization. You could have 2,500 people in your organization. To be very honest with you, now more than ever, people work independently. Sure, they work in teams, there's meetings, but there's so much of the day where we have to do work on our own, and we have choices that we have to make. And if you have a very clear purpose or a very clear why that really is clear about the direction, it helps when we're making difficult decisions as a team, or when I have to make an decision as an individual to move forward. If there's a clear why, if there's a clear purpose, it can really, really help me make those decisions on my own and not need to get too much clarity and all that type of stuff. So a purpose and a why is important. And I think no matter what you do, if you make tires, if you make parts of a car, if you provide clothes, whatever you do, I do think collaborating with employees, finding out the difference that you're making in people's lives that you can galvanize around to make sure that you do it with quality and with customer focus. I think everyone can find their why and their purpose no matter what they do. We're not all pharmaceutical companies who are saving people, from disease, but I think we all have an impact on people's lives. So I think that's important. Now, you're right. You got those armies, that army of doers, people who love getting things done. I mean, you'd love to have those people on your team. I think one of the biggest challenges for leaders and leadership teams is prioritizing work. And there's 25 great ideas and great projects. You only have the capacity to do 5 of them. How is it that you go about making that decision? How is it that you go about communicating why it is that you made that decision? So the answer to your question for me here is my leadership philosophy has always been around transparency, meaning I try and share as much about the business as I possibly can with our employees. What's our focus? What is our priorities? What are our short-term, medium, long-term priorities, and how they fit with our strategy? When we make a decision to not proceed with project A, even though it was really good, we have to explain why. So at least people, they may be disappointed, they maybe worked really hard on that initiative, but in their head, they should at least understand why another project won versus theirs, and that there's plenty of opportunity, and then hopefully that project will get done in the future. But I think that discipline around transparency, that discipline around prioritization, and the discipline around communication is the way to handle sort of more of those difficult situations.
I love it. Well, and you actually alluded to, people having to do a lot on their own, and they're juggling a lot of things. I actually think in this post-COVID era, there's also been a bit of a reset for people as far as what their personal priorities are, which is, I think, why I'm kind of emphasizing the why being so important. But you talk about quiet quitting and, and wanting to stop that, put a stopgap on that. Can you explain a little bit about what it means, and what are maybe 2 or 3 key tactics to stop it from happening?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about sort of falling into a personal purpose, and certainly my wife and I, my family and I have our own sort of goals and purposes and things that we really, really care about. But when these global reports came out that says 59% of global employees are quiet quitting, and that quiet quitting is
Mm.
people are frustrated, they're a little sick and tired with being taken advantage of. They've been working way too hard and have not been appreciated. So I'm gonna do the absolute bare minimum in my role, and I'm going to find fulfillment at other parts of my life. And when I became aware of this word, I mean, it's not a new concept. We used to call it employee engagement or employee disengagement, right?
Right.
And so for me, the idea, being someone who's worked with hundreds, thousands of people who are so proud of the impact that we had on our communities, so proud of the impact that we had on our clients' lives, so proud of the things we were able to do together. They're not, we've gotten married, some of us have had kids and have had successes in other ways too. I mean, life is balanced in that regard. But the idea of people going to work and doing the absolute minimum and not taking advantage of the opportunity to learn and grow and build relationships and build things that they will remember for their whole lives, for me, is very sad.
Right.
So I have been sharing lots of thoughts, on my just on my LinkedIn page, because I think leadership needs to be. There's a reason why people have reacted this way. I've spoken to hundreds of people about this or interacted with them on LinkedIn or various channels. People feel taken advantage of. They feel that their companies have profited very well, that they haven't been recognized, that they are cutting down on jobs and making people do more, and they're not paying them more. And so there's a real legitimate reason why people feel that they need to quiet quit. But I think leadership needs to be better. And I think employees are missing something, a real opportunity in life if they give up on their jobs.
Well, and I'm adding to what you've said by some of the undercurrents that I've heard in many different interviews and work scenarios is not only is there a transactional, experience that happens day to day with companies or what you do in your work. There needs to be two more layers. One is the creative, right? The idea to create something and use that other part of your brain, which is a creative piece. And the third is transformational. And again, that's the connection back to why for me is, if you can tap into, okay, a certain amount of your work is transactional, there must be a little bit of room creative and a little bit of room for transformational. If you are growing and learning and feeling like you're contributing bigger value, whether it's to your workplace or your community or the people that you're impacting, those to me are the other two pieces that leadership can almost need to create the space for people to tap into. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think so. So my views and my philosophy are from observations and discussions, and so you adding on to my thoughts is that's how you collaborate and create great things that are better and better and better. I completely agree. In fact, I just did a short video yesterday on LinkedIn, just about some of the common attributes I've noticed of all the people I've hired and some of the ones who've been successful. And one of them is, you talked about transformational, and kind of what I was talking about was a little bit about learning. And these people have this, and I do have this innate desire to learn and learn and learn.
Yes.
We appreciate that we don't know everything and we want to learn more, and we find the process of learning alone to be exciting and invigorating. And I can tell you in my career, one of the reasons why I have this perspective on leadership is, when I was 27 years old, the founding CEO of ING Direct in Canada, I begged him for a job. My resume did not support him giving me a job, and he did give me a job. And I spent, 2 decades trying not to let the guy down, because he gave me an opportunity that my resume didn't support. And I learned as much as I could. I sucked as much in as I possibly could, and those types of things. So kind of paying it forward because I see that people who really, really do relish that, they have that creativity, they want to transform and learn. If you give them the space and you give them the opportunity, maybe to take a job that learning is the only way they're going to be able to be successful, or they get to work on a project that will greatly expand their knowledge or ability in a particular area where they have a weakness. It really is, I think, one great way to help people be engaged at work. I love your perspective, which is there are transactional things about work that it's just the way it is. And
Exactly.
none of us like that part, but we have to do it as long as there's these other pieces where we can use those other parts of our brain and we're growing. I think there's a real opportunity for people to not give up on their job and try and do the minimum, and love their work and love their teammates and love serving their clients.
And so we have some ideas for both the doers on the ground, but also the leaders here about how to overcome quiet quitting. So let's go to one more question. And I love this. It was a pop out in the book for me. On collaboration was kind of the theme, but the quote is, if you think innovation is about technology, you're excluding 50% of the room. To innovate, you must collaborate. Can you tell us more about that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, that came from observing it with my own eyes. I will tell you that, I do some advisory and consulting work today. It's work I love. I love to help. Although for me, I kind of like to execute those strategies too, which is
Yes.
kind of why I'm looking not to consult, but to actually lead teams and that. But this question about technology, particularly in financial services, is still one that I get asked about all the time. So, for me, so at ING Direct, Tangerine, technology was something we referred to as a core competency of ours. So that was something that it was a real competency that we had right from the beginning that differentiated us from our competitors. But technology is an enabler. Technology allows things to happen, whether it's a process like processing a payment or processing a check or underwriting a mortgage, or whether it's an experience like for an employee about how they log in or how efficiently they do their work, or a call center agent and how they can support an agent. Do they have what they need? Or of course, the client, right? And their experience in a retail location or on the web or on a mobile device, right? So technology is just an enabler of that. So to use technology effectively, you need to really understand the stakeholder you're serving. You need to know this before you choose the tech you're going to use and how it is that you want to implement it. So in the room, you need to have, your client, right? And you need to understand their lives so that you can figure out how to enhance it with technology. You need your employees who are serving those clients in the room, right? So you understand the struggles they're going through to provide this service that they really want to. You need your operations people in the room because they're the ones who have to go sort of make it happen after sort of some choices made, whether it's to sign up or open a new account or buy a product. You need your marketing people in the room because they're the ones making the promise in the world that you need to deliver on after.
Yes.
And you need your risk people and your legal people. So in the end of the day, I think you need to understand who the end user is, and the different pieces of the process to truly make technology come to life and really create a differentiated experience. So if you only have the tech people in the room, you're missing, I think, some of the most important bits of information.
So that is a perfect segue into one more question.
Canada's podcast, the #1 podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs.
So the segue is, it's pretty status quo to just have, the internal management team, but you talked about involving maybe customers, people on the ground, maybe, some people call it a test group or whatever. How do you do that on a regular basis in business, Peter?
Listen, it's a non-starter. I mean, everywhere I've gone, we have had, and listen, most of this was founded, in my ING Direct and Tangerine days, is we had a client advisory board. So we had a group of volunteer clients who we had regular access to. We would meet on a quarterly basis. They were a representative sample of our client base. They volunteered. They wanted to be a part of it. And we interact with them about the role they want a bank to play in their lives, what we were doing well, we weren't doing well, how we could help them with some of their challenges in life. And I think that really, for us, informed the products that we launched, the experiences that we launched. We had our senior executives, because we were direct, so we were call center, mobile, web. We had some physical locations as well, but all of our executives had to sit in the call center and YJack with call center associates. They needed to do 1 hour a month. It's not asking very much, because they needed to understand our service people and what their challenges were, and they needed to understand the clients. And we even tried to get people to actually serve our clients that way as well. And then we had events in our regional locations as well. So I think it's absolutely paramount and fundamental that we stay close to our customers. You have to do it by segment, because customers are generally quite diverse.
Right.
And I think you get a lot from that. And I think it's absolutely sustainable. It doesn't even have to be overly expensive as well. And then, of course, you need to do that internally, right? Talk to your employees as well, so that you make sure you understand what their experience is.
Awesome. I love that. And again, I'm part of a sort of global business networking group called Open EXO, and our why is transforming the world for a better future. And when you know that you're in a group and that is our collective why, it's super sticky, right? Like we know, okay, everybody already has that mindset and that state of being when you're entering it. And they have like an ambassadors program. So it's kind of the same thing. You talked about the client, group. This one is, listen, our job as the ambassadors is to live and breathe the brand. So, understand the internal workings, the why, the how, what are all the functionalities of the group. And we earn our way into some of the offers, right? So we can do a certain amount of work being spread the word, however they're guiding us, whatever they need from the ambassadors is how we earn our quote unquote points. And it's actually, a lot of the points are just digitization of, tokens that we can then use within the community for expert advice. We can get all kinds of interesting things along the way. So it's another strategy. But to me, it breeds that innovation, right?
That's a great story. Actually, one I will footnote you, of course, but I will use. In my 2 years with Mortgage Alliance, trying to help those people, we actually introduced a similar program. We called it an ambassador program too. So our most engaged brokers had the ability to be our ambassadors, and what we asked for them, and there was like reward for it. And what we asked of them to do was a couple things. One is represent our brand out in the public domain and represent who we are in speaking engagements or whatever the case may be. Or if we were recruiting agents, that we could use them as a referral source. Hey, go talk to them. And then maybe more importantly, just based on the challenges that we were facing at the time, which was to use so we had a loan origination system that was proprietary, and to test it for us, and actually run files through it and give us feedback and those types of things. So I just think it just needs to be a part of the way decisions are made if companies want to be successful in the future.
And again, like there's always that personality that wants to be the early adopter, wants to say they tried it first, right? And said, hey. So
Exactly.
one thing I want to talk about just briefly is, again, the concept of Weology, how it helps individuals. We've really sort of talked on business leadership, but I do believe that it can also help individuals and communities, right? In your own, your own nest, whether it's at home or at a community level. How can you imagine the concept of Weology to apply for individuals and communities?
Easily, and that's kind of like the click part that you sort of mentioned before, right? Which is you've got this company with this purpose that really wants to help people. And listen, maybe it's ING Direct or Tangerine, or maybe it's something else. It could be whatever business, whoever's listening, right? I think this is very relevant to. And if you have a purpose and a why, and you've sort of built a culture that is really, really supportive of it, there's a real opportunity in that framework for employees to thrive, right? To be more empowered because they have the guidance and clarity about what they need to do. Listen, if whatever you do in the choice of your day, if it's supporting our clients, if it's supporting our community or our environment, if you're doing those things, then your manager's never going to get upset with you because you were sort of driving those priorities forward for the organization. So instead of leadership that says, here's your 10 things that you need to do today, do these 10 things, and when you're done, go home or log off. We always had a fair bit more flexibility, where certainly there were some transactional things that absolutely needed to get done, but there was always room, to explore a new idea or work on a project or initiative you were interested in, or, volunteer to, so there was a lot of autonomy and ability for the individual to get what they wanted. So it wasn't overly regimented. Of course, they still needed to do what they needed to do. Also, it was our employees who very much decided how we were going to give back to the community. What are the causes that they care about? And of course, those would always be motivated by people's personal stories, people who had their own problems or own issues in their community, and we rallied our people and our money together to support them. So the click for me is, if you have a purpose and you have a why, and you have leaders that understand the individuality of the person, and there's trust. So the individual knows that if they put the extra effort in and they learn that we're going to have their back, it creates this sort of circle of success, where you get momentum, it builds on each other. People want to be a part of it. You're helping more clients, your individual people are growing, and it just sort of perpetuates very much. I must say I'm a product of that. I was given an opportunity to take on a job that was better than maybe my resume supported. And I felt very supported by the community that was around me, and it allowed me to continue to grow and be successful. And who knows where that goes.
Amazing. Well, I want to shout out to that guy that hired you a long time ago, because I think the financial industry is a better place because of your leadership. So let's just take that to the next level. What do you have a vision specifically for Canada's financial industry?
I do. That's a very easy question. And I'd say, my time at ING Direct and Tangerine, I think we only got part of the way to what's possible. Listen, my view is our financial institutions, particularly in Canada, we have the resources to be a force for good in Canadians' lives, right? Our banks here, all financial institutions, we need to be profitable. There's no doubt about that, how important that is, right? But they can also, I think, do more to help Canadians live healthy lives, healthy financial lives, but healthy lives in general. And our financial institutions in Canada, they're very involved in communities. They give tons of money and tons of time to their communities, but I really think there's more we can do to solve more critical issues facing Canadians more broadly. Access to the financial system, living healthy financial lives, increasing financial literacy, reducing the debt load, increasing their savings and investments. I definitely think that they have the capital, they have the smartest people in the country that work for them, they have the data and information, right? They have a global perspective, I think, really to help Canadian families and Canadian businesses solve the problems that they face every day. So I know that maybe it can sound, I think they can still be very, very profitable and help solve these problems in a little bit more than they are today. They're protected in this country a little bit. There's not as much competition in this country as there is in the UK or as there is in the United States. And I think because of that, we have a very safe system, but it's more expensive for our for Canadians. And I think in return for that, we need to help them be healthier financially, and which is a direct correlation to being happy.
It absolutely is. And there's one thing in there that I personally is a bit of a personal goal is reducing debt load. I think there's like debt is not just a budget line item. It's like a weight as I see it, right? That I think increasing capital and access to great health, abundance, things like that is something that to me is in the foreseeable future, certainly within my kids, possibilities. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on, are there any locations in Canada that are a bit of the hub for where innovation is happening in the finance industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, listen, I was very involved in the financial technology space in Canada, and a lot of it's here in Ontario, whether that's in Waterloo or it's here in Toronto. There's also tons of stuff happening in British Columbia and in Vancouver. Our kid, we have three kids, so I have a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 17-year-old, and they're one's in grade 12, the other two are away in university. So my wife and I are very interested in, and we're actually exploring an opportunity right now that could land us in Vancouver, and I would love to make that my first home as well. So I think in Canada, there's Ottawa's always been a tech hub as well. So I think there's some really good things happening here in Canada.
Awesome. Well, and there's no secret. I'm a Canadian. I've lived in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Alberta, BC. I'm out on the West Coast right now, and the BC host. So I'm always recruiting great talent to BC whenever possible. So hopefully we'll be able to have coffee live in person one day soon.
I would love that.
Okay, so I just want to get vulnerable just for a moment, and let's just put it on the table. Are there any decisions that you've made in the past that seemed like a mistake? Do you still consider them mistakes? If not, why not? But what have you learned from them?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt in my life, whether it's personal life or business life, there have been some decisions that I should say that they felt like mistakes at the time, and maybe at the time I wish that they didn't happen. I think for me, there's one that just totally stands out. I spent 21 years of my life with ING Direct and Tangerine and Scotiabank, and I spent some time in being an entrepreneur, sort of in the financial technology space. But I was invited to be the CEO of a medical cannabis company, and for me, it was very exciting for two reasons. One is to be a financial services person and get to go over into healthcare and with medical cannabis and be a part of something that was going to help people's lives. And I did what you'd expect I would do while I was there, which is go in the call center and listen to the impact this was positive impact this was having on people's lives. The other one too is, in Canada, there was a real opportunity for Canadians to be a leader globally. And I saw this very similar to the ING Direct experience to bring this model to the world. Well, after 9 months, a lot of negative issues happened in the industry, and some negative issues happened in the company that I was leading. And that caused me and my family a lot of pain. I was, sort of wrongly called out in the media. Me and some of the other senior leaders were fired, which would have been my first experience with that. Now, fortunately, that has all resolved itself very publicly and all very much in my favor. I think I've extrapolated the learnings from that, and I think I'm way better, way stronger person. But listen, in hindsight, what did I wish that didn't happen? Of course, it caused me and my family a lot of pain. But boy, am I a better, stronger person. One thing that I realize how rich I am is my friends and family. I didn't realize the army of people that love me around the world, and I know it now more than ever. Which
Wow,
couldn't be a greater gift.
that's
I had people from 15 years ago that I worked with in the United States going, I know you, I got your back, I believe in you. And boy, that's I think we all know, when you look at the last few years in the world, and many of the people in our lives, is if you have that, I mean, you can do anything. And so I think that was a great discovery for me.
And I think therein lies the personal Weology at its best, right? It's the individual, it's the community. And when you have that philosophy and you embody it and you broker it in your circles of friends and family and community, they rally around you at the most important time. So thank you for sharing. That was a great story. Just to wrap up, and I want to touch on this because you mentioned health a few times. So you were involved in Cine Health, and I was going to leave this as a time permitting question, but health is such an important part of every individual. So you were involved in Cine Health. How did you get involved in that particular project? And what do you envision health and how do you envision health and business to be synonymous in the future?
Yeah, so it was so I was on the board of the foundation for Sinai Health, which is really Mount Sinai Hospital, Mount Sinai Foundation, as well as a variety of other things that they did. For me and my wife, we always chose, let's say, a larger charity to be involved with, and that would always be time and financial resources. And then we always chose a smaller one, right? So we chose a big and a small for just variety and impact and those types of things. But to be involved and start to understand the health services ecosystem in Canada was amazing for me. Certainly the fundraising aspect of it, but also the operation of a hospital, the challenges of a hospital, was very, very eye-opening for me. And I think I understand the challenges that we face every day. That being said, as a leader, I still, again, like picking up on what you just last said about this Weology sort of framework. I remember an employee of mine when I was at Tangerine, and he was in our treasury department, and he worked so hard. He was so smart. I am so fond of him. And I remember him telling me about his health issues and his sleep issues. And he's a young man, right? And he blood pressure issues and all those types of things. And I remember like sitting there looking at him going, I won't say his name, just saying, listen, man, like you are fantastic. We love you here. You have nothing to worry about, but you got to take care of your health. And if you need to go to bed early at night, or if you need to please take care of yourself, because you're going to wake up one day, you're going to need double bypass surgery before you're 50, and you're going to regret, some of the choices you've made. And I think for me, it was the moment I realized that leaders really do have a role to play in creating the space and the freedom to make sure the balance is right between these really hardworking, achievement-oriented people. But I certainly don't want to be responsible for someone's health going the wrong way because they wanted a promotion, or because they believed in our vision so much that they sacrificed their personal or family life. So there's certainly some of the lessons I've learned along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Now I'm going to wrap up. How can people get a hold of you post-podcast?
So I think the best way for other than giving you my cell phone number and my home address is on LinkedIn. That's the place where I'm interacting with people the most. So Peter Aceto, which is pretty easily available on LinkedIn, and just provide a little comment that you saw me through here, because I don't accept I don't necessarily accept everyone, because I want to make sure that's community is that I'm really connected to it.
Absolutely. So anybody who is really focused on amazing workplace health and wellness and advancing the tech industry, we encourage you to share in Peter's thought processes here, maybe connect with him on LinkedIn, and then, who knows, we might be transforming the Vancouver finance industry before you know it. Peter, thanks for joining us on Canada's podcast.
Yeah, it is a great pleasure. There's a wonderful opportunity, and you have been so much fun and such positive energy. So thank you so much for having me. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully you and I can have a coffee in person as a new resident of Vancouver.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Canada's podcast, the #1 podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs.